Welcome to the finale of Let's Play Metroid. Today we're going to Tourian, but before we get there we're gonna have to make one more little trip through Brinstar, picking up a few items along the way, even though we technically already have everything. And that's good because that gives me the opportunity to correct something I stated earlier, or more so add to it. Because all the way back in part 1 I talked about the story and mentioned how Mother Brain is not the leader of the space pirates, Ridley is, and Mother Brain is just an entity created to control the Metroids, and the Metroid themselves were also created by the Chozo. All of that is still true, but it was only retconned into existence later in the series. So while that may be the story as we know it today, back then it was still seen as Mother Brain is the leader of the space pirates, and we weren't really given much backstory on the Metroids or the Chozo. So all the story things I mentioned all the way back in part 1 is still part of the story, it's still true, but it wasn't back then. So that's still the continuity as I like to see it, even though it didn't really exist when this game first came out. And some of the later games, I think the opening of Super Metroid still mentions that Mother Brain is the leader of the space pirates. But I just look at the main continuity as it is nowadays. But if you prefer to look at the story as it was back then, I can excuse that because that was true at some point. So one more time, look at it however you want, I just like to look at it as it is nowadays. And I know I should have mentioned this in part 1 and especially not in part 6, but I kinda forgot about it. And another fun fact, you know that pose Samus takes when she goes into the elevator and she had at the beginning of the game where she looks at the screen? She actually takes on that pose for like a split second when she's turning around, but you can barely ever see it. And I'm only mentioning this now because I only just now realized this when I was looking at when we were climbing up that hallway just now. There was like a split second where Samus went into her elevator pose. At around 1 minute and 23 seconds. I don't know if you'll be able to see it once I upload this to YouTube, but I'll take a screenshot and I'll edit and edit back. So that's something. I don't know why it's there for like a millisecond, but I actually saw it earlier either during this playthrough or the test playthrough where I got an item and it froze in that pose. I thought it was sort of a glitch that he suddenly went to that pose while getting the item, but apparently maybe it was just because I was turning around when I got the item, but I really don't know. So I'm just going to ignore that and talk about how easy it is to go through Brinstar when you have the screw attack. Wave beam also helps. Then again, it is Brinstar, this is the first area of the game, and I mentioned before how fun it is to go back to the earliest area of the game when you're all powered up and stuff. On some occasions they also make sure that those areas become more difficult as you go further into the game, but that's usually only when you have to go back there for story purposes. And I know why they do that, to keep up the challenge, but you also lose that fact of showing the progress you've made from the beginning of the game. So that's just getting into video games are a lot more than just gameplay. You also have to show atmosphere and all kinds of other things. I mentioned all the way back at the end of part 3 of this playthrough how I was talking with someone who was defending the first Metroid game. One of the arguments he brought up is how the first Metroid game has atmosphere by not having a map. How you can feel lost, which I can give him points for that. It is a good argument, but if that were the case then it went at the expense of gameplay, and you should never have something at the expense of gameplay. That's no good. Anyway, we just got back to the Ice Beam, which I don't recommend going to Tourian without the Ice Beam. It's a really good idea to go to Tourian with the Ice Beam. Which, once again, adds to the fact of don't go picking up the Wave Beam, it's not worth it. The Ice Beam isn't necessarily a requirement to go to Tourian, but it is seriously recommended, and it might as well be required. But now that we do have the Ice Beam, we are ready to go to Tourian, right? Well, before we do that, we have one more thing to pick up. You may remember near the entrance of the game there is that one E-tank somewhere in the ceiling. Yeah, there are some ways you can pick that up without the Ice Beam, but I'm just going to pick it up with the Ice Beam. So before we go to Tourian we're gonna get that, but I'm not gonna show off all the way going back there and then going all the way back to Tourian. I'm just gonna do a little edit. Not because I didn't go there on my first take, but just because I want to save time and don't want to show off running through hallways we already went through like 19 times. And on top of that, we don't really need that one E-tank because we already have all the E-tanks we can carry. I just want to pick it up so I technically have 100%, even though I technically don't have a 100% because I technically still didn't get those 5 missiles. So I'm just gonna pick it up just for the sake of picking it up, and I know that someone would complain about it. So in a few seconds we are going to edit, and now we're here. Again, there are ways to get up here by using the morph ball bombs and placing them at the exact right time, so you can keep going up and up in midair, and then you also have to shoot up at the right time to reveal the E-Tank, then go back into morph ball mode or something, and it's very difficult to do, for me at least. I've never been able to do it, so I just get it this way, by freezing an enemy in midair, and now we're back. That last edit actually caught me off guard a bit, but we're back to exactly where we were before we did a first edit. And now we're finally going to Tourian. This is not the way to Tourian, that's the way to the long beam. It's one more door up. Tourian is all the way at the top of Brinstar, and then in order to get into Tourian we go down again. So Tourian is actually located right above where we started off the game. Actually Super Metroid points that out, but yeah, in order to get to where Samus began the game, she actually had to go right past Tourian. So what's up with that? Then again, it's kind of a good thing, because at the beginning of the game Samus wasn't strong enough, and if she went there right from the start she would have died. So I'm guessing that Samus knew that, and then she also knew that there was stuff in Zebes that would make her stronger? Seems unlikely, but anyway, we are now in the statue room. Shoot the statue of Kraid and shoot the statue of Ridley, only after you've already defeated them, of course. And this bridge will appear. I'm sure there's a way to get in there without having that bridge appear, but I don't feel like doing that because I want to actually show off the game. But now, let's head to Tourian. Final area of the game, pretty much straightforward, and it's also the place where we finally get introduced to the Metroids! Yes, it took us a few hours, but we finally get introduced to what's essentially the title of the game. Still not as bad as Kingdom Hearts 2 though. And this is also the reason we really needed the Ice Beam, because the only way to beat Metroid is by freezing them first and then shooting 5 missiles at them, and we have more graphical glitches. Except that door, that is like the one yellow door in the game that's actually supposed to be yellow, and it actually takes 10 missiles instead of 5. But back to the Metroid, as I said, freeze them and then shoot 5 missiles at them. If you have the wave beam, it doesn't do jack shit against them. Luckily the Metroids also have a really high chance of either dropping a lot of missiles or a lot of health, so you don't really have to worry about dying or about running out of missiles. If a Metroid actually latches onto you, the only way to get them off is by going into morph ball mode and dropping a few bombs. After a few bombs they will just get off and you can freeze them and shoot missiles at them. But once they're on you, they start draining health, and they start draining health fast. Even faster if you don't have the Varia suit. And I just love the Metroids. I love them by design, and I also love how dangerous they can be. Also how they were sort of built up, because they're the title of the game, but you don't get to them until you get to the very end of the game. So that works really well. They're also the only enemies you're gonna fight here, but they're not the only threat here. There's also the lava, which for some reason hurts you, even though other lava doesn't hurt you when you have the Varia suit. Later on there are turrets that shoot at you, but there are also the Rinkas, which I don't really count as enemies because they're more projectiles, but they are annoying. They keep respawning and they do a lot of damage. We're actually gonna see them in a few seconds. Here they are. You can freeze them so they stop respawning until they're either off screen or unfreeze. Once they're frozen you can also use them as platforms, but they just kinda get in the way, especially during the last part of Tourian where the knockback they give is really annoying. But that's pretty much all there is to know about Tourian. You can't really get lost here, it's just about surviving. If you die you respawn at the beginning of Tourian without any E-Tanks and 30 health points. So then you're probably gonna have to grind in the other areas, so that's a pain. But if you just know what you're doing, then Tourian should be fine if you had enough prep time. If you have all the E-Tanks you need and all the missiles you need. And luckily it's not very long either, it's about the size of the basic level of a platformer. Also just try to kill every Metroid you can find. It's a better plan than trying to avoid them because they're also pretty damn fast. And they give you a lot of health and missiles like already mentioned, so that's always good. I'm not saying it's like super easy or anything, but it's just not that much more of a challenge as we've already had. But it's also just that part of the challenge from the other areas was getting lost, so you would have to survive longer and keep running into the same enemies multiple times. And this area doesn't do that. You're not gonna get lost here, you only have to go everywhere once. Then again, it's also a good thing because making you get lost in order to add challenge isn't good. I mean, games often have like puzzles in them, and that's fine because first of all you usually always know where the puzzle is, and it doesn't require you to very slowly move to the other side of the area in order to even think there might be something there if the game doesn't tell you. That's pretty much my big problem with the game. Not only that it might not show you where to go, but there are so many places where you could look to maybe find out where you need to go, and it takes so long to get to those places. It's like if someone gave you a really stupid riddle and the answer doesn't make any goddamn sense, then you don't feel accomplished when you do get the answer right because it never made any sense to begin with. It's the same here when you finally find that one block that you needed to bomb out of those million blocks in the game that look exactly alike. It's not satisfying because you can't say, ah, I should have known that, because there's no way you could have known that. Don't try to lie to me that there is a way to know that, because there isn't, because it looks exactly alike unless you have the map. But anyway, this is our final challenge before we get to the final boss of the game. It's a hallway. There are turrets here, there are rinkas here, but mostly there are these walls. You have to shoot a lot of missiles at these walls, and if you stop shooting missiles at the walls for too long, they will actually start to regenerate, so you have to start all over again. Well, if you let them regenerate completely, they don't regenerate very fast. So if you then start shooting again before they fully regenerate, you didn't lose too much, but just don't let them regenerate at all. Though not like it's easy or anything to just keep shooting at the walls, because the rinkas and the turrets, they give you knockback, so then you have to get back to where you were in order to keep shooting at them. I do recommend freezing the rinkas. And the turrets, they have a limited places where they can shoot, and they don't necessarily shoot very fast, but it still can be annoying to keep avoiding them. But once the walls are gone, you don't have to worry about getting through them fast, because once they are completely gone, you don't have to worry about regenerating, so they stay gone. I think that the later walls might take more missiles than the earlier walls, but I could be wrong about that they all just take the same amount of missiles. Maybe the later walls also regenerate faster, I honestly don't know. Now it starts to get a bit more annoying, because there's also lava behind this wall, and the rinkas can easily knock you into the lava, and that's never good. But there she is, the final boss, Mother Brain. Well, I call it a final boss, it's barely a final boss, because, well, she's a brain in a jar. She's not gonna do a whole lot. In fact, she just sits there and let the missiles and the turrets do all the work. And to be fair, they do the work, but she herself, she is kinda helpless. She just sits there and lets us shoot missiles at her because she doesn't really have a choice. It does do damage when we make contact with the jar, which doesn't make sense because it's just glass. But it's also one of the most annoying things of this boss fight, because you can very easily fall into the lava pit between her and the wall. And let me tell you, once you fall in there, it's really hard to get out. First of all, you can't jump on the little ledge where Mother Brain is, because you will take damage and it will knock you back into the lava. And where we're standing right now, it's also kinda hard to get back to, because the lava gimps your jump. So the only thing you can do is wait there and wait for a rinka to be shot at you, then you have to freeze the rinka and use it as a platform to get out of the lava. So what I'm doing here is standing on this little spot where I'm standing right now, because the turrets can't reach you from there. And as soon as I see the rinkas appear, I just get out of here, wait for the rinkas to pass it, and then I go back to standing there and bump missiles in Mother Brainer brain. If you do it like that, you're pretty much golden. Just watch out you don't get knocked into the lava by the rinkas. So that's pretty much it. That's the final boss. In Zero Mission she actually shoots like a laser at you, which is easy enough to avoid, so it barely changes anything. But yeah, that's the final boss, and it ow, my eyes! You might not see it when I upload this to YouTube, but that screen flashing can really hurt your eyes. But we're not done yet. We just got a time limit activated. As a Metroid tradition, after the final boss there's always a self-destruct sequence, and you just have to get out within the time limit before the whole place explodes. Only thing I can say here, use the straight jump. If you use the spin jump, that makes it more likely you're gonna fall down, and you can take it easy here. The time limit is very generous. You are generally going to make it if you don't fall down too many times. So if you just take it easy and make sure you don't fall down like I just did right here, then you should be more than fine. In fact, I'm about to fall down all the way down in a few seconds, and I still make it within the time limit easy, and I can still just take it easy, take my time to slowly get up here. So there's barely any threat here. The time limit just adds a little bit of pressure, but that's about it. No enemies here, nothing that can kill you. I do like the music that plays here, but not as much as the music that plays in the later Metroid games for the self-destruct sequence, where it's usually the same one. It's also the same one they use for Ridley's theme. But this one's also okay. It actually sounds like kind of victorious, which does make sense because we technically did beat the Mother Brain. We are victorious, but we're also about to blow up if you don't make it in time. The platforms here are pretty small and have kind of annoying placement, but you should be fine. The control is good enough, especially when you use the straight jump instead of the spin jump. Spin jump can also do you just fine. I didn't spend too much time talking about how this game really controls, how it feels, it's fine. That's about it, really. And that's it, final elevator, we're done with Let's Play Metroid. We get one more text about how awesome we are. Allow me to just put on my narrator voice. Great! You fulfilled your mission! It will revive peace in space, but it may be invaded by the other Metroid. Pray for a true peace in space. And because we beat the game under 3 hours, we get the best ending of the game that you can get without cheating, of Samus taking off her suit. There are other endings to this game that you get for different times, and one you can only get by cheating, which I will show off in an extra video, but for now, credits. Oh, and by the way, Samus is a girl, mind blown. But anyway, you already know what I think about this game, but final thoughts. If you really feel the need to play this game for whatever reason, play it with a map because that's just the way it was supposed to be played. I'm not gonna give you any more reasons for why you should do that, why you might not want to play this game, and just what's wrong with this game in general, because I already gave you like a million. But with that said, the next playthrough I'm gonna be doing is Pokemon Fire Red, so I'm gonna be going on a little bit of a hiatus before uploading that, because that's gonna take a really long time for me to complete. So it's gonna be a while before you're gonna be seeing that. Hope you look forward to it, stay tuned and have a good night.